All right, good morning, Latvia. Thank you for joining us. I send you a warm welcome from Riga Business School and the Adizes Institute, and I'm thrilled that you've chosen to come and listen to our program today, and I'm sure you'll find information from our panelists helpful in these difficult times. Before we get started, just a word of thanks to the great support staff here at Riga Business School. They've made all of this possible and will continue to support us through the show. Now, the way today will work is that our guests will share with us their thoughts and experiences going through this crisis so far, as well as we'll hear some ideas about what is likely to come. We'll finish with a question and answer period, and so please use the chat function to send us your questions. You can write a general question to the panel or feel free to ask specifically of one of our guests. Now, I know that all of you listening come from different industries and different sized companies and have different and unique situations. And from my conversations with people, I know that many of you are facing some of the most difficult challenges of your professional career. Therefore, the goal today is that you get 3 or 4 ideas out of this session that you can take and use in your companies. Now, not everything you hear is going to be applicable to your company, but take what is relevant. So now let's get to the panel. We have Daiga Ergle. She is Chief People Officer with For Finance, a leading digital consumer loan organization operating in 16 countries. Many of you will have had classes with Daiga as she teaches several management courses here at Riga Business School. We have Jānis Osles. Among his many achievements, he is owner and chairman of Premex, which works in the industrial concrete industry, and he has business around the world. Kaspars Janssens is with us from Citadel Bank, where he's a member of the board and chief operations officer, and he is going to help us understand how this global health crisis has become an economic crisis. Ervins Dortinch is the chief operations officer from Atako. He oversees a large tire distribution company across the Baltics. If you have bought tires recently, they likely came through Latako. And finally, we have Ojar Sturda, who has been a partner in several PR and media companies, as well as owned his own business. Today, he is here in his role as a crisis management expert, helping companies get through tough times. Thank you all for joining today. Ervins, I would like to start with you.
Yes, thank you, Greg.
So the reality for many of the people listening right now is that they have seen their demand go from 100 down to 0 in virtually a day. Now, not everybody's at 0. Some are at 30%, 40%, 50%, but still companies have taken a sizable hit. And I know that you also have seen demand go down. So can you tell us how your company is coping from an operations perspective, and how does this impact the overall business?
Okay, thanks, Greg. Yes, and hello, everyone. So how we were affected, actually, we are behind the plan, approximately 25% as on today. As on today, we are still reaching last year results, but you can imagine that our business is a seasonal business, and actually season is not yet started. So actually we forecast additional loss for the summer season in approximately 1 million euros. Accordingly, we will have excess inventory because that wouldn't be sold. We have already enforced idleness, so we doesn't have enough amount of shoppers in our retail shops. Because we are not only wholesaler, we have 8 retail shops in Latvia. And of course, we have limited opportunity to visit customers in person for business-to-business sales team. And we have quite a large sales team across the Baltics. A lot of sales guys are working in all 3 countries, so they can't cross borders, and it affects sales greatly. Financing is also, extra financing is not available, actually. There are not available leasings for sales guys. for cars, for example, and of course, challenges with cash flow. Overall, I don't think that it's something special. I believe most of us will have such issues, more or less, who is dealing with sales. So what have we done? Actually, we revised individual credit limits for all portfolio, for all clients, as well as B2B and B2C. So we reduce them, but with gaps so they can work. We reach to all partners, whether it's suppliers of goods or service, and negotiated deferred payments for 3 up to 6 months, and as a or just moved cash flow, let's say, or even got temporary discount for this period. And in this respect, I can say that all the partners were really treating us with understanding and gave a helping hand, actually. And it helps greatly. We also agreed with suppliers possibility to return goods that won't be sold in summer, or if it's not possible, for example, from China. Sorry, guys, no one will send back to China tires now. It's too expensive. We are agreeing on postponing payments. Of course, we cut expenses like business trips, nice to have investment projects, office procurement, and part of marketing even, and actually leave the necessary ones. We unfortunately had to reduce amount of employees. We have total amount of whole group. We have 280 employees. It's not only operations where I'm in charge of, but in total we are reducing about 30 persons. And we cut off vacancies that are not urgent ones, are not or are not related to long-term development. And the same is for projects. Short-term projects are only left only the important ones, but all long-term projects are still on track. So we are not stopping long-term development things. And we changed focus also in sales team from volume to more to efficiency and profitability, because actually that's the time we have internal capability actually to do that.
Okay.
And
Let me
as
ask you.
advice, I would say that's actually all. But as advice, we wanted to share that the hardest thing or the toughest one thing is in these times to have strength to stay human. So after the crisis, you won't be ashamed to look into your eyes or into your eyes of your partners, so or employees. That's the toughest thing, actually.
With the remaining staff that you have, that's still sizable staff. Have you made changes in salaries?
Yes, Greg. Thanks for reminding. I missed it. Yes, we cut salaries from 5 up to 35%. Salaries cut in whole company.
And how has been the response to that?
Really good, Greg. Actually good. Everyone understands situation. The main question is how long will it take? What will happen afterwards? Will it take months, till the end of the year? Unfortunately, those are the questions we cannot answer. Yes, but we are trying to keep all the people, and even if we have to reduce number of people, we are talking with them that if the situation will come back, we will gladly have them back too.
Okay.
So the main resource actually is the people. So we must think about that.
All right. Thanks, Evans. So Daiga, you're the chief people officer at Ford Finance, and your job is dealing with the people, development of people, integration of people, and we're being told that this situation of significant drops in business could go on for months, and that must be causing a lot of anxiety and stress among people. And many companies, if it goes on that long or longer, they won't survive. Right, so employees probably are nervous about this. Well, how are you dealing with your employees?
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, as I see HR mission these days, it's obviously around two main pillars. So one is communication, ensuring that our people around the group across the countries are not left in dark about what is happening and what they may expect as coming things. And the other pillar is promoting, keeping, maintaining, making sure there's this connection among the people in force. So it's this sense of unity is somehow reinforced through the HR efforts. And the purpose of all this, what we are doing currently, is obviously to maintain two things, basically reasonable emotional well-being of our employees, and the other thing is productivity, because the situation is totally new for everyone. It's not that we don't know what is remote work. Certain specialists have been working from home or from other places every once in a while. But now everybody is pushed out. So basically there is no this physical interaction. And it is very hard for people because human beings are social animals, so they need that interaction and how to make sure it happens. And how we have been responding from people perspective to this crisis situation. So the first thing we said, employees first. In this situation, employee safety is first indeed. So even before the emergency states were declared across the countries, we started to prepare for employees being sent home. And actually, the thing that we never thought we are capable to do, that everybody, including the call center agents, can move to the home working, that happened, and that was carried out by our IT organization namely within a couple of days. So we were surprised by that speed, how we managed to do this. And employees appreciated this. For example, in Spain, our employees are so grateful because after we moved all of our employees out to work from home, the whole Spain went on still working from their own offices for another week or so, and some of them are still forced to go to the offices. So our people are really appreciating that we took care of them. The other thing we said that depending on the local legislations, we go a few steps above and beyond what legislation requires. So for example, if there is the people get sick, the sick leaves, they are depending on a country, there are a few days when either the full pay is not paid usually by the country, or it's on a reduced level, or it's on a reduced level for entire sickness level. We said during this crisis period, company covers the missing part, so employees are getting their full pay during their sick days. And then it is again specific by countries. If people feeling unwell and nervous, whether they might have a virus but they don't have a clear symptoms or so, if that is possible in this specific countries, they want to go being tested, and that costs money. They have to pay themselves. Company would pay for that, so that they get this peace of mind at the end of the day. So that was in terms of taking care of people's safety. Then communications. We organized, and that actually happened this week, at the beginning of this week, we had a town hall, like the virtual town hall with our CEO, where people questions were taken beforehand so that it can be all maintained with a reasonably short time span. And our CEO answered all those questions that our people were sending in. He described the situation, described from the company viewpoint where we are, what we anticipate is happening, honestly admitting that there are things we don't know yet, but that we will inform everybody as soon as we know more about specific items and so on so forth. And we received tons of positive feedback from the staff for this communication, as people said, we feel calmed down. We know there are things that are beyond our influence. Still, we know that we will be informed if anything further happens. And there's this trust in the management communication, leadership communication, which I think is very essential during these days. And what else we do, obviously, to maintain this sense of unity, this connection, then we do small things, across the teams, across the countries. We do things like, for example, morning coffees for a team. So everybody is calling in at a certain time, usually before the workday started. Not like everyone from the group, but within the certain teams, like country team, or for example, we do our HR team is calling in, and then with our coffees, we are just chatting about anything but not business. For 15 minutes, it's just your kids, your animals, your dogs and cats, and how you feel, just for this human interaction, human emotional sort of connection. Then we are doing stuff like, obviously, I think a lot of people, companies do the same, like sharing the pictures on the internet, how we work from home, what does it mean for us, all sorts of fun going on there. We have created the digital postcards. We have this for finance post office, so people can get like pre-designed postcards with funny and inspirational quotes and send to other people across the group. Again, a very well taken initiative from our colleagues. We obviously maintain and much more active in those one-to-ones in our team meetings and everything, just to get people together. What we actually realize that people are even more busy somehow during this remote working period. The schedules are fuller, and it's more difficult to catch a free moment during the day, and days very often end much later than normally when we are working from the office. So that is something that we observe. And obviously, we also think about educating people. So we have our learning platform where we post different, those are called playlists, and then individual people can also contribute. So they can post interesting blogs, readings, videos about how to work remotely, how to stay productive, how to stay sane during those difficult times, and so on and so forth. So that is, and another thing that we do is talking about the productivity. For example, for the aged workforce, I mean, it's not really easy for everybody to work from home, right? There are kids, there are like other family members. Not everybody has like separate room where they can, hide themselves for working. And what we do, we are responsive then somehow to adjust schedules for people with their individual reasons. So if someone can work, I don't know, later in the evenings or early in the mornings, or during the midday, when the kids are sleeping or something like that, to the extent of possible, we are also doing this for our operations staff, obviously. So that is briefly that I could share.
That sounds like a lot of changes that you've gone through. What have you learned through this process?
Well, I think the full scope and extent of learning is just to be captured once this is hopefully over. But a few things we realize already. This remote working thing, now it's a forced thing and everybody has to stay at home. But I was, for a year or more, I was struggling with my IT colleagues, with also operations colleagues, to say that we should partly allow people to be more flexible, whenever it makes sense, whenever they don't need to be necessarily in the office. Because, I mean, remote working is a bit of a trend across the globe in different industries, right? And somehow we were very conservative in this. There are security concerns and these concerns and that concerns. Now suddenly we realize that actually we can do it. Everybody can do it, right? So I think one thing that we will take away from this, that certainly we will be more flexible in these working conditions, and I think we will be able to attract more people, more talented people who look for this flexibility. Also for the operations, not necessarily everybody needs to sit in our call center in the office. So maybe not only Riga, if we talk about Latvia, not only Riga is our job market, so to say. Maybe we can attract people from other locations in Latvia as well. who don't want to or can't travel those long distances. So this is one very obvious, straightforward learning. And I think there will be more when we go through this.
Sure, thanks, Daiga. I can see here where you've really found an opportunity in this crisis. Yes. So let's get Yanis in here. Can you tell us how this is affecting your global business? What has happened to your demand and your ability to supply global customers? Has that been impacted, and how? And what are you doing to deal with this crisis?
Yes, hello. So Primex is building industrial floors worldwide. And so the crisis affects us differently depending on a specific market. The reactions of health authorities in different markets are different, and we are following whatever health authorities in that market are telling us to do. There are markets that are still very active. From our markets, we see really active Israel and Sweden, and also United States in many states. And then there are markets which are in a lockdown. So for instance, they announced lockdown completely, including all construction sites in South Africa and in UK, where we had big projects to do. And then it also affects us in a way that we rely on cross-border movement of people, because our engineers and our workers have to travel for the job sites, and that obviously affects us. It doesn't affect us so much in terms of the movement of goods. So we have been able throughout the crisis, even with our Asian suppliers or European suppliers, get that everything moves pretty good. In terms of reduction of sales, at the moment, I think that construction industry is lagging because there are projects that have been started and they haven't been stopped. So we are working kind of full speed. However, I expect that this is going to end soon because we can see that new projects are being moved further. So for me, it's very difficult from my personal perspective to take a look and understand what is going to be the total global demand. We can see that like a big contracts where we had to license our technology, we had a big licensing contract almost signed for 5 new states, United States, with a huge American company. It's going to be postponed right now, so it's going to be, will have impact. So what we are doing as a company. So first of all, we took this COVID health crisis very seriously. And to go through the crisis, I think one of the key moves for us was to appoint a special champion whose job is to ensure that all employees get through the crisis healthy. That is his only job. He was previously responsible for health and safety. Now he has only one focus, COVID, nothing else to do in the company overall. And so his job is divided in 2 parts. One is to take care of the hygiene. So how can we make sure that everybody is fixed with all the necessary hygiene equipment, all the disinfectants, etc. So it's difficult to get, you have to do things. How can we get masks to people? So we tried to procure, and we've been successful to procure masks for our employees, and then to see in which occasions to use them and which occasions not to use them going forward. And other things that we have to do that are maybe above what the government is suggesting immediately in all markets, because these suggestions are very different depending on the market, but we try to be like the best practice. We also looked at Chinese companies. There are Chinese companies that have gone through the crisis without getting anybody sick with COVID in China, and there are benchmarking cases, what people did. So we read that and tried to understand how is applicable to us and what we can do. So that's kind of one thing, one big thing, that's to kill the virus, okay? And then the other thing that is also the gentleman is, our champion is doing, is to think about how do we strengthen the immunity of people. And there are things that the government authorities are suggesting regarding food, regarding rest time, regarding alcohol consumption levels. etc., regarding that we get with the food or in any other way all the correct necessary vitamins, etc. So that's also an important part. So we are trying to educate people, trying to see what we can do, how we can do, and how we can move forward on this within the government guidelines. And so that's one big part of what we are doing. Then obviously, like with everybody else, on the financial side, we have put all attention only to cash. So we are monitoring cash, obviously delaying all payments out and pushing for any payments to come in, maximizing the amount of the cash that we have within the company. As previously was mentioned, trying to renegotiate real quick what we can do, placing double more attention to insurance, although the debitor insurance, although I'm not entirely sure what it will mean legally, but at least we are absolutely insisting on debitor insurance, and we hope the insurance companies will not walk away, but we don't know. So that's kind of the main thing. And then obviously also we are doing cuts in overall expense. Although, like I said, we can take a Lala approach and say that we are fully in good sales, far above last year's level. But I'm completely sure it's going to change. So we are already cutting costs everywhere. That's from cost perspective. And then kind of from a long-term perspective, we take the opinion that the crisis is a great time to grow. And that in crisis, there will be a lot of companies that will be scared and that will just stop moving and will not think about how to grow. So we think that this will happen. And we think that this will present good opportunities for us. And we have divided the crisis overcoming strategy in 3 parts. So the first part is to survive. That's immediately what we are doing. So anything regarding cash, regarding total cost amounts, and regarding whatever we have to do. So that's what we do, survive. Then the next step that we are thinking already today about is how do we reset our strategy? Which customers are going to continue consuming our services? Which customers will stop consuming our services? What do we do about it? Which customers are we talking to and how? And then the next, and that is what we are trying to rethink right now, and also how to get ready to our third strategic step, which will be to thrive, how to grow fast after the crisis. So what do we have to have in place for us to grow, and which customers will grow and in which ways they will grow? So we try to define that at this moment, and that kind of has to guide us what to cut and what to leave and in which way to go through the crisis. So we're trying to take a more longer term view and trying to guess the best way how to grow very fast after the crisis. Okay. That's it.
All right. So you mentioned that your sales are still strong right now. Does that mean you're at full staff then?
Yes, we are.
Very good. All right. So, Oya, as you've been listening to this, tell us, what do you think from what you've heard? Have they done the right things, and what else could be done?
Actually, from what I'm hearing, everyone is doing really good job. All these crisis response activities have been really good, and I'm glad to hear that. However, I would actually like to point out that from a couple of things that we know from overcoming other crises that could be relevant to the current situation. From what we heard so far, it's pretty obvious that we are currently dealing with immediate effects of the crisis, because we are in the very early stage of these events. But what we know from overcoming other crises is that sooner or later we have to figure out what is our goal, what is our ultimate goal, what indicators we will have to say that we have overcome the current crisis. And I'm really glad I was really glad listening to Mr. Ošlej's telling about the long-term perspective that Primex is already trying to figure out what's going to be, what is coming next, what will be the world after the crisis is over. And I think that's a right way to go. For each organization, it usually is different. What is this preferred state after the crisis is over? For somebody, it's all about revenue. For somebody, it's moving business online. So some company may say that we are over the crisis when we have managed moving our business fully online. For somebody, it's taking care of their supply lines. So supply lines have been disrupted, and well, this is our main problem. We need to find new suppliers or something along those lines. So in each situation, it's different, but I think we are at the point when it is very useful to define as clearly as possible what is our goal? What is the goal for coming out of this situation? And it applies not only to organizations, it applies to countries and probably globally as well. If we look at the COVID crisis in general, then the goal that all governments are working towards to right now is to deal with this crisis, and most probably the solution will be in one or two ways. One being a medical solution. Will there be a drug found or invented that will help solving this problem, or will it be a vaccine? Whichever comes first, that would be one side. Which is being explored right now, and the other side is social engineering that we all feel most of right now, like social distancing and all the remote work and all that kind of things. So probably the solution globally, the solution will be somewhere in between these two trends that are going on right now: the medical solution and the social solution for this. And whichever comes first, probably it will be a combination of these two. But that's in if we look at things globally. But I think this applies also to every organization. The sooner we figure out what will be the end state of these crises for us, for each organization, I mean, then it will be much easier to work towards that. That's like setting goals in business. The crisis management is no different, except that it is squeezed in time, and it's a lot more pressure. You know, that's the same management principles apply to crisis management. So that would be one thing that I would like to point out. So setting the goal for overcoming the crisis, and another one would be while we are working towards this goal and trying to find this optimal solution for the situation, we should always remember that well, things can get worse, and crisis management is there exactly for this. What if things go worse? And what I mean by that is that while we are focusing all our efforts and resources towards overcoming this crisis, we should always keep in mind that there are other things can happen. For example, like recently, I think it was a week ago, there was an earthquake in one of the southern European countries, in Croatia, I believe. So, well, those people over there had to redirect their resources to overcoming that as well. So what about cybersecurity? While we are focusing on overcoming the COVID crisis, probably somebody is working on some cyber bug as well, you know, and we should be ready for that. Yeah. Exactly. Yes. And we have to keep in mind that that when we focus on one thing, that we shouldn't exclude others. So if a company has a risk register, which is a great thing to have, then well, from time to time the management it would be very useful for the management to go through that risk register and think a bit what kind of risks are we exposed, what other risks we are exposed to right now or might be exposed to. So that would be the other things. Right?
And so I guess a lesson out of this is that companies should do more ahead of a crisis in terms of evaluating risks and scenario planning. And is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Scenario planning and risk register. This is crucial for crisis management and training. Well, these are the most important things for crisis preparedness, of course.
Okay, great. Thanks, Oyas. Kaspers, let's move over to you now, and we'll change it a little bit and look at a broader perspective. Can you give us a wider picture of the situation covering Latvia? What are you seeing in companies in general? How are they holding up? And what prognosis can you give us for the near term and maybe 6 months out?
Right. So I think lately we heard a lot of prognosis on how this could develop. I think what is beauty of this whole thing is that there is I think the biggest uncertainty ever we had seen about the economic outcomes of all these situations. Yeah, we've heard globally different numbers of how GDPs could decline. Also recently in Baltics, central banks have been coming out with different numbers, but I think all of them are pretty much valid and at the same time invalid, because we don't know actually how this development of the virus will continue, and how long we will actually need to be staying in this lockdown we are currently in. And it's clear, the longer we sit in this, lockdown globally, the worse it will come out for the economies. I think what I heard so far today, I think companies are well prepared for the crisis. I think they are doing all the right steps to overcome this. So I think that is a good thing. Clearly, I think there will be a drop in GDP in Baltics. No way we will avoid that. I think it probably might be close to double digit or even higher. Same goes for unemployment, I guess. So these are the at least the short term prognosis we are having. And then we don't know actually how long this all will drag on, and whether I think just a week ago probably everybody thought about the V-shaped recovery globally, that this is going to be quickly fixed, and then everything will come back business as usual. I think this week already people are more thinking that this is not going to happen so fast, and it might actually take a bit longer. We already see that countries are prolonging the state of emergency situations, and also Latvia is already highlighting that it might be longer than just Easter. So it's very uncertain where are we heading actually, and this uncertainty also is not good for economies. On the Baltics, I think if you compare this crisis with the previous, I think we are a little bit better off this time, because because this is not the cause of this crisis, not economic actually. So this is a health crisis, a virus crisis, which means that there are no fundamental issues with economies as such. That we are much more balanced as we used to be, 15 years ago. Yeah, there are, less leverage out there. Banks are much stronger. Capital positions for the banks are stronger. So I think we are better positioned now to withstand this crisis. And also we see that the governments are acting much more, let's say proactively and confident than it was previously. Also, I believe that the fact that the Baltic economies are more, service oriented, also the IT industry is strong, and also logistics, which are actually now taking off despite the fact of all these, restrictions. I think that will also help to recover faster for the Baltics once the situation calms down. Yeah, so from the industries, what we see in the banks, it's clear that the hotels are empty, restaurants are suffering. Don't talk about the aviation industry at all. So these are the hardest hit, and also, all related to retail is now being on the downturn because people are not, consuming; they are sitting home. So that's all there. But at the same time, as I said, there are several industries like IT industry, the same large transportation companies. We see that they are actually having more orders than before, and they are to some extent benefiting from all this situation. Yeah, and then I think it's too early to judge on the loan portfolios in general because it's probably just the end of March. We will see more situations developing in April, when we will probably see also increase in delinquencies of the loan books. We see currently a little bit elevated requests for restructuring of the loans. It's growing day by day. But it's also some of them are, or at least half of them are related just, currently for info only. They just are, trying to understand what the banks will react and how banks can help. And I think this package of overall help, not only in Latvia but globally, what are governments proposing, what are different agencies, tax revenue services, banks. I think this is a massive packages all over the world which are now available for businesses to withstand this crisis in the short run. This obviously is not sustainable in the long run. So and that's why I believe that if the sooner we lift the restrictions, the better for economies. Yeah, and I think that's about it. And what regards to the bank operationally, I think we do the whole same measures as the companies in other industries. So obviously we also, as Daiga said, it turns out that in a week time you can, put all the employees work from home. And so we do as well. The banks, the branches are, operating in appointment mode. So you actually, make an appointment and then you come and do the business there. We have actually, as a crisis management part, we early on we split the whole bank in A and B teams, meaning that we when those who come to office, we do not overlap. And yeah, so this is, I guess, those reactions or actions we took also early on.
Good. All right. So what I want to do now is move to some questions. The first one I have is for Ervins. Comes from Raimonds Oshikovskis, and he says the crisis lasts now for 3 weeks in Europe. How did Lataco decide that on a 75% salary reduction and letting go of 30 people is enough, and for how long of a period? This virus could last for 6+ months, and will that be enough?
Okay, then start. Whether it will be enough, we don't know. Actually, we have to track down the situation actually every day, every week, every month. And if there will be need, we will have to take additional actions. As for calculations, it's quite simple. We just forecasted total drop of the summer season. So we know that this amount should be enough to cope with the first 6 months period, if the rest of the year is okay. If not, then we will have to make additional changes. And that's a fact.
And so you projected a $1 million loss, and that's for the next 6 months?
It's not a loss. It's ungained profits that we would have,
okay,
to be able to keep everything running smoothly. So actually, it's not like a loss of million.
Okay.
It's lack of it's not really cash flow. It's lack of profits, let's say.
Okay. All right. Then for Primex and Yanis, how does Primex deal with the situation of installing equipment requires your specialists to travel abroad?
What we have done at this point is we have placed teams in all the markets, and we are not moving them. So that is one opportunity. The other opportunity is that there are still, I mean, it really depends from country to country. So there are countries where there are no restrictions, like Sweden, for instance. So you can fly people to Sweden. You can charter an airplane and fly them. So it's possible. And then you have to go really looking at, depending market to market, the red jackets. There is a Exporters Association, the Red Jackets. I encourage everybody to contact them. There's good ways, and they help with systems. So if you need to do something, contact Red Jackets.
Okay. All right. From Maris Gailis, I've got a question that goes to the whole panel. And it says, what do you think about the latest announcement for how the U.S. will overcome the crisis? And how will that impact the rest of the world? And I suppose what that may be referring to is Donald Trump saying they should go back to work by Easter. Daiga, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, it's a very difficult question to answer. I think there are huge risks. I think nobody today can say that in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or in 1 week, we can safely return back to our offices and to our work. I think we should listen to what World Health Organization is saying, and then how the situation develops also in each separate country. This would be much smarter thing to do.
Anybody else comment on that? Oyars?
Yeah, probably. In crisis management, there are several things that we can call priorities. And when you go through a crisis, and the priorities go in a specific order, things that you should focus on. And the first thing is people. That you should focus on, and organizations come only second or third. Well, if we apply these principles, then we can see, that this is if things go that way, well, it will be very difficult to see what the benefit of that could be, because ultimately the economy cannot go on without people feeling well, and that applies to organizations, that applies to countries, and that applies even to families.
Okay, Yanis, you wanted to jump in.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think that Donald Trump said return by Easter, and his main health guru, Fauci, said that goal needs to be taken flexibly. So, so I think that that's the goal. But I think that I think they are kind of playing a game where Donald Trump is more pushing towards redemption of the business, and the Fauci is more pushing towards resuming it, and then they are forming a kind of a dialogue with the society that way. And I think that what Donald Trump is saying is that there is also a huge cost, including cost of lives lost from a crash of economic crisis. I remember reading University of Oxford research on collapse of Soviet Union, through which most of us lived through, where they estimate that 22 million lives were lost because of the collapse of Soviet Union, because the lifespans dropped dramatically. The lifespan, longevity of living within Soviet Union was far higher than it was in 1990s, and men started to drink, and et cetera, et cetera. So you get a lot of problems. And you don't simply have money to run health system because, okay, we can optimize it for COVID, but what about other sicknesses? You know, where do we get money to treat those? And there's lots of other things that endanger the humans. So that's what they are thinking. And also, I think that each country needs to be taken separately. In the United States, there are 540 ventilators per million people. In Italy, for instance, there's 54. So the difference is 10 times more. So they can afford in the United States to have a much larger outbreak with keeping people on life-saving systems than they can in Italy. The capacity is 10 times higher per capita. So then the responses of the individual countries will depend on that. And the third thing that they are kind of keeping in mind, that everybody keeps in mind, is that we also have to figure out what we are doing in terms of our public health response, because in like everybody now has to be a epidemiologist, right? But I read epidemiologists saying that these virus outbreaks have typically two phases. So if you really push down the first phase, and but the virus doesn't die out, and then you lift the restrictions, it anyway continues. So the question then on your health response as a country is, what do you do? Do you allow it to kind of go forward so everybody gets infected and then kind of lives through it, if you can afford, like United States with lots of ventilators, or not? And then how much you suppress the first wave, how much you suppress the second wave, how do you go through? I don't want to be a prime minister right now to make these decisions. They're super hard and super difficult, but there are lots of trade-offs that we need to think about. And I think as a country also we really need to think about, you know, what is our best strategy to minimize economic loss at this point. It's probably not a total lockdown. There's the worst strategy, not to get into total lockdown like what Italy and Spain had to do. What do we do right now to practically overcome it? What are our strategies, you know? So I think one of those must be isolation of elderly and chronically ill people. There are 4 main sicknesses that cause death with COVID. So why don't we isolate them right now? And also preparedness of the country. So what do we do for that? And just lockdown is okay, but this is step 1. Step 2, how do we get ready?
Okay. All right. Here's an interesting question for all of you from Vladimir Kuzmich. It says, many businesses are struggling. Some are dealing with crisis more successfully. Do you, as business owners and management, communicate across companies for advice? Are you seeking out colleagues in other companies and communicating that way? I suppose one of the things we're doing today is the purpose for that, right? We're trying to accomplish that today. But go ahead, Ervin.
Yes, Greg, we are, and actually that was the first thing we did. We besides the bank, which is actually our main partner, business partner, even if it gives just the money, we have a really tight relationships with our suppliers, and for a really long time. And that was the first persons we called. Some of them are in Italy, yes, Tires and Pirelli and etc. And they have this problem right now. And those were the first we called. And the second was over the biggest clients. The biggest clients, how they deal with it, what their actions could be. and of course we are doing that because it's hard time for everyone, and our like business is actually very like friendly. We are really good friends together, so we are doing it.
It's family atmosphere, yes?
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right. Anybody else on that? But
I
really,
have formed peer groups with other CEOs, and I encourage everybody to do at their own level. It's people that work in different other companies, just to see what they are doing and just to get advice, not to carry everything on my own shoulders.
Good, good, all right. Very good. So from Gatis Fromanis, Yanis, you mentioned that Primex policy is to lay all outgoing payments to keep as much cash as possible. Do you think this is really the right policy and we should all delay our outgoing payments?
I think that your incoming payments, so in balance sheet, you have working capital, that's your, let's say, cash in the bank. So we have a certain amount in the bank. And then you have incoming receipts, people that promise to pay you, and then outgoing receipts, things that you promise you will pay to the others. Those things that you promise you pay to the others, they are for sure. They're 100% there. The things that are coming in, I don't know, 50-50? Maybe yes, maybe no. And so you really have to be aware of this. Now, if you look like strictly like in our balance sheet, you will notice that, okay, we have a very nice money coming in, very nice money that needs to go out. There are some certain time frames, and it's very beautiful. So you can take a Lala view and think that everything is fine, but I don't think so. I think that part of the customers will default and part of the customers will delay their payments out. So how do we balance?
Sure, and I think companies are seeing that already, that companies are defaulting on payments. They're slow on payments, for sure. From Ines Zelinska, what learning and opportunities do you see in this situation? So, Yanis, you've given us some. Daiga also. How about from Kaspers?
Sure, I think it's a well-known saying that every crisis is also an opportunity. And clearly, I think we have to be eyes open how markets are changing, how people behavior are changing, and where the new opportunities arise. I think the world after the crisis will not be the same. I think people will realize the way how they work. Remotely, for instance, that it's actually much better than it used to be. They can spend more time, with families. They can save actually on traveling, back and forth to offices every day. Save money on fuel. I mean, I travel to office now just once a week. I parked my car just last Monday and just haven't moved it at all. So I think there will be, new behavior patterns, and then obviously we have to react on them.
All right, so we're about out of time. Just to wrap things up, I think one of the big learnings out of all of this is that this is certainly a call for managing change. We've seen some dramatic change in a very short period of time, and it highlights the need that companies need to learn how to be more flexible in their operations, as Daiga highlighted, and that she's experienced in For Finance. It's a requirement to be able to change. It's a requirement that it needs to be done through teamwork, that companies' management needs to be working together better. And what we also see at this time is that change is easier. People are ready to change because of the crisis. When people change, when things get really bad, that's when we quit smoking, when we quit drinking, is when our health gets bad. And right now, our health, not only physically health, but our economic health is really challenged. And so people are ready to accept change. And I think a message for company leaders is to, work with your people and then move fast. And you'll be surprised at how willing your company is to go with you. Thanks to all of you. Very good conversation. Thanks to everyone for coming in today and for sending in your questions. And that's all for today. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.